Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdist Dave. Today I'm hanging out with Mikey from Legends of Avantris. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me, Dave.
Thanks for coming on. So, for anyone that's not familiar with yourself or Legends of Avantris, you want to give us the elevator pitch?
Yes,
Inform us.
absolutely. My name is Mikey from Legends of Avantris. I am just one of seven nerds. We embarrass ourselves for your entertainment. We are an at the table Dungeons and Dragons stream. We are on hiatus now, but we normally, when our content is going in this not during this pandemic, we usually stream about twice a week at the very least, and it's usually homebrew content. But we've been branching into uh, modules such as Curse of Strahd, which we just finished last October.
So, is the world that you're playing in Avantris?
Yes, yes. So that's how we first started, where it just started as we started playing this home game in 2015, and I wanted to play D&D, and I had tried 3.5 when I was like 12 years old, and it was just way too much for my tiny brain at the time to handle. And so I thought, oh well, it's impossible to DM. I can never do it. Oh well, I'd love to. That's rough. And then when fifth edition hit, I just got inspired. I basically coerced all of my friends into playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I realized, hey, I need a world, and I can't memorize all this like Forgotten Realm stuff. I'll just make it all up. And I got very carried away, as any DM or um, world builder knows. And so that's how Avantris came to be. And all of our campaigns are set in the world of Avantris. Even the modules that we play, there's always homebrewing and changing to fit it somewhere in the world of Avantris. Yeah.
Yeah. Some adventures like Curse of Strahd are great for that because, you can easily pull in and out from wherever you want to. And,
Yep.
yeah, you can usually drop other things and find a place for them. We usually do a lot of home brewing ourselves. Plus, like, that's part of the joy of it in itself is like, the world building and creating your own playground to have your friends come play in as opposed to using somebody else's.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really fun is where you're able to like take the influences and just steal from everything. I mean, that's what I always like recommend when people
Yeah.
ask me about like world building. Just steal all of the stuff that you love and smash it all together, and your friends are going to get the reference, and that's all that really matters, right? Is like, are you and your friends having an outstanding time with all the references? Like, I think about the very first arc of our campaign that we did when we first started playing D&D before we started streaming, and like it was basically just a love letter to the HBO series Deadwood, and like Banjo Kazooie, and Hound of the Baskervilles, and a bunch of other inspiration stuff that I love, and I smashed it all together, and somehow a D&D arc came to be, and it worked.
Do you have a high concept for Avantris?
What do you mean by that?
So, okay, I guess so. Like, I guess like the overarching theme for your campaign world or campaign setting. Um, like I guess like for our world is kind of like broken and discarded things where we have all these different ages like many D&D worlds do, but each age kind of generally end it with the gods going, we messed this up, and they kind of like sweep it into a pocket
Got it.
dimension to clean up the world and forget about
Got
it.
it. Yeah, so I mean the keystone and the through line, I think, of Avantris and our world and our campaigns is like the concept of heroism.
Yeah.
And so like that's usually like the thing that a lot of the DMs do. And so we can all enjoy like kind of more edgier grimdark campaigns, but I think that the stuff that we do is very like positive and heroic in a lot of ways. And so the purpose of Avantris is to really provide the DM or whoever's running the games basically a wide variety of themes to basically elevate the story of heroes in this world. And so basically, what's the kind of and then basically and then theme. right? And so, what is the theme that you want to do? Do you want something that's Curse of Strahd and it's a gothic horror? Do you want to do something that is more kind of like a high seas piratey type adventure? Do you want to do something that's kind of even more a little bit Wild West fantasy style? There'll be that theme turned up to 11 with all of the tools to really just showcase challenges and threats for heroes to overcome. And so that's how kind of basically really rich themes in order to kind of elevate the heroism of the characters that the players are playing.
How, how long did it take you from roping your friends into playing D&D with you to turning it into a stream endeavor?
So I think that probably took about I think that was about 3 years. Yeah, 3 full years, because we had started playing, and I think in the first 6 months, we were playing like almost every weekend nonstop, right? And then obviously, as a campaign goes on and schedules become more difficult, we started playing more and more infrequently. And then two of our players had moved away, and so we just thought, oh well, I guess we're never playing D&D again. And then in 2018, we're like, I was just craving it. I'm like, I want to freaking play Dungeons and Dragons. I need it. I need to roll some damn dice. And we figured out a way to kind of stream them in. We did all sorts of jerry rigging and figuring out how we could stream people and not have tons of echo and have a decent experience.
Yeah,
And
it's
we
hard.
actually figured something out that made it work. So three of the people or four of the people were at the table, and the other two were patched in. And then once we did that, we're like, hey, we have all of the tech to stream it. And if we start streaming it, that'll actually have a schedule that we have to hold to, so we can actually play together. And honestly, the streaming was actually more of just an excuse to keep us playing weekly, and it turned into this whole thing that frankly, I never would have imagined. But
There,
I'm very
there's
glad we
only
did.
two reasons people stream, I think. They're going to be the next Critical Role, or they need something to make sure their group assembles at a regular time to play.
The schedule, the biggest enemy of a D&D group is the schedule, and man, a stream really does help that
Yeah.
battle for sure.
Yeah, we've done this. We've done the stream somebody in a few times, and it's always hard because like at the table you kind of forget that you have someone there that's being streamed in, so everyone's talking at once, and then that person who's being streamed in has no idea what's been said because it's just a
Yeah.
cacophony of noise.
Yeah, and that's all, and especially like depending on the quality of your mic, right? Like, and that's what's really, and you got to make sure, right, that you are thinking about that person, because obviously it's really easy to kind of get that sort of energy and vibe when you're all at the same table. But if someone is patching in, you want to make sure that you're actively reaching out to make them feel included as well. That's something that you really need to be cognizant of. Well, if you do have a remote player, but eventually everyone moved back to the area, and we've been able to switch to fully at the table, which we've been doing for a while now. But it took about 3 years, and then in the end of 2018 is when we started our stream, and obviously the pandemic put us on hiatus for a little bit, but we will be back shortly. So very much looking forward to that.
I should have asked you this offline, but I'll just ask it online and
Go for it.
maybe embarrass myself. Let's see. You guys like dress up too, right?
We have in some campaigns, and
Okay.
so I know that, like, the whole idea of like dressing up in a costume while playing D&D is like the stereotype, right? It's like I put on my robe and wizard hat, and and roll
Yeah,
some
yeah.
dice. And when we first started playing, costuming was never a thing. Maybe like as a gag, like someone would wear a funny hat, but it was never really serious. And then for our Curse of Strahd campaign, it was a new concept. It was going to be like a mini campaign. It was only supposed to be like 13 sessions. It ended up being like 21 or 22, as these things happen. But then we all decided that we were going to dress up as our characters, and like, not I play a lizard folk in that I didn't have like full scale makeup, but I had long nails, and I had a lantern and a hood and that sort of thing to be a little bit creepy. And I was shocked at how much like that, like the costume and the kind of the totem, the prompts helped me get into character. And I think all of the players would agree. And so I think that we may not do full dressing up for our future campaigns, but I think like little props and totems, I think, to help us
Yeah.
get into character. But that dressing up is definitely something I would consider going forward. It's a blast.
Yeah, we mostly we do not do that either. But for the game that we just recently started playing, I have a chef's coat and hat that I
Yes.
use.
Amazing.
Because of course, it's a chef feat, so I have to play a chef character.
Exactly right. I love that feat, by the way. I mean, that's and you can take your enemies to Flavor Town, and
Yeah, yeah,
that's as long as you say that every single session, then
then it
you've earned the
works.
chef's feat.
Well, I feel like there's a lot of good cooking puns that you can use,
Oh, exactly right. And I
so
mean,
they don't run out.
there's just so many, and you can basically kind of like just if you want to be Guy Fieri one session, and then Gordon Ramsay, and just absolutely roast your enemy. Actually, a great bard would be a chef bard, and you just absolutely roast them
Yeah,
as
well,
Gordon
you know,
Ramsay.
I went with
That's a concept for all
Battlemaster
you watching at home.
Fighter,
Oh, that's a good one.
but I took the entertainer background.
I love it. I love
So
it.
yeah, so my character is a dwarven elven fusion chef, and like I just and I'm running with that. There is like you have blade singers with the elves, but there's also a subset called the knife singers, and they're basically just hibachi chefs.
I
So,
love that. I absolutely love that. So you have the projectile weapons of the scalding shrimp to just like fling it out, and that's what you have. What's the range on that? What would be the range on a shrimp?
I guess that's an improvised weapon.
Yeah, there you go. I love
So
it.
yeah, so basically I just throw darts and like so just all kinds of sharp things from the kitchen is I'm
Outstanding.
calling them darts.
Outstanding. I love that. Yeah, shrimp, darts, and yeah, everything from the kitchen. And that's actually it's a really great way. I think it's a great example of like the power of D&D and tabletop. It's where like you can basically come up with a fun concept and the rules you can find a way to make the rules make it work. And I think that is the perfect freaking example. And so I have to ask you a question if I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
We're just talking here, man.
does the hat do you feel like wearing the hat and like the chef's outfit, do you feel like that enhances your getting into the character's head a little bit, or like or does it just feel like the same for you?
I don't know. It's kind of a silly game, so it does help me embrace the silly.
Exactly right.
Because so the game we're running is called Dungeons and Delving, number one game show in whatever world Ted's running in.
Outstanding.
So it's a modern game, but it's a reality TV show where adventuring parties delve the dungeon for fame and fabulous prizes.
I love that.
Yeah,
And I think that that's how it all works, right? And it's also the importance of like level setting and setting the tone, right? And so like in our Curse of Strahd, all of our costumes are all like relatively serious, right? Because like this is a horror campaign, and this is going to be like scary and spooky, and we need to make sure that like everything is, it's not all dour. We're still cracking jokes the entire time, but like everyone needs to be taking the world and the setting and the threat seriously, or this isn't going to work. And I think that's the great thing about that context setting. And then meanwhile, like that'd be one Saturday, and then the next Tuesday we're in the Feywild, and there's just horrible degenerate shenanigans, and we are all like actually like losing organs because we're laughing so hard. And so that's it's really also the power of tabletop, where you can just basically have a game show and then like one day, and then
yeah.
have horrifying gothic horror, and everyone is crying and screaming in anger and cheering in jubilation after defeating the bad guy. So
Yeah, the first session was us trying to woo a sponsor.
that's amazing.
So we were going around and meeting the various sponsors that take part in the show, and trying to get them all, find one to get on board.
That's outstanding.
Yeah,
Iron.
well,
You got to have your Iron Chef. Anyway, continue.
well, it's funny because Ted had pitched us this game, right? And I was like, "You mean X Crawl?" Because back in the 3.5, there was definitely a game called. There was definitely yes, Shallender sounds like X Crawl. Because Ted's like pitching the game. I'm like, "Yeah, X Crawl. You should go get that book," and he did, from an earlier edition. So.
I need to look into all that old stuff. I'm very admittedly a D&D and tabletop baby of getting into the fifth edition. I mean, granted, like I have basically every single 3.5 book, but I just like to look at the pictures and read about it as a kid. And I was like, I have no idea what these numbers and these pluses and minuses mean. I just think it's neat.
I think. I was just gonna say, I think the great part about 5 is like it's really easy to convert that old stuff over.
Oh yeah.
Into it. So
and that's been what I've actually been doing. And I know that another one of the DMs on our channel. So I'm only one of three DMs. We also have Nikki and Derek, and I know that I've been doing a lot of conversions from fourth edition for some stuff that I like, as well as some 3.5. But Derek, who's working on a new campaign that'll be debuting this year at some point, has been just doing a ton of conversions, and it's a lot of work, but it's totally doable. And you can also find conversions for there's actually entire books that I've seen from 3.5 that have been entirely converted from front to back into fifth edition on Reddit that you can find, and so it's really cool that basically there's all this great treasure trove of content that you can also pull from if you're getting a little bit creative.
Yeah, it's fairly unlimited at this point. So
Yeah.
you guys have kind of like been on hiatus, come back, been on hiatus due to being an in-person game.
Yeah.
So what have you guys been doing to kind of like stay plugged in with your audience?
Yeah, I mean, so like Discord is honestly the best way that we've been doing it, and it's what's really cool about I think that all tabletop communities, or all communities in general, but I think our community too, is that we all share the love of the game, but we're also just like individual people who like each other. So we have a channel for like people that post their pet pictures, or people that post food and talk about TV. And so like, even though we all like found each other because of Dungeons and Dragons, we're just kind of like talking as friends in a community about like their dogs, or how, work was going, or, life updates. And so that's been very cool during COVID. Even when we are, off stream and not playing Dungeons and Dragons, there's still tons of ways to stay connected, and it feels like I'm getting the same kind of messages in the Discord as I am from my friends on Facebook, right? And so that's a very cool thing, that there are so many tools now to stay connected, and getting pet and life updates. And also we have a channel where of campaign notes for the people who are still have the privilege of still playing D&D in these times, to update everyone on their campaigns.
Nice. So Stradvania, is that a Castlevania Curse of Strahd mashup?
That would be outstanding. I love both of those things.
That's what it makes me think of. Or is Stradvania the replacing Strahd?
Unbelievable. Is that a comment there?
No, I'm asking. I'm curious.
So for Curse of Strahdanya is the name of the female Strahd in the campaign that we do. But there definitely is Castlevania elements. I feel like you can't really do like a Dracula Strahd without taking influence from Castlevania and all of the rich lore there. But yeah, that's
maybe we're playing Curse of Strahd right now, and I feel like sometimes it's more like Once Bitten than Dracula.
Well, that's the thing. There are so many ways to play, and I think it's pretty safe to say that Curse of Strahd is the most beloved of all of the 5e modules, if I had to wager. And I think there's a reason for that, and I think that because there's so much there, but there's also so much freedom that the DM has. You can run it in any kind of way, where it can be Once Bitten, could feel like Dracula. You can have it feel like, a Castlevania game. And, there are people that, also do it where it's like, Strahd, I think someone in our Discord mentioned where they were trying, like Strahd is trying to turn Barovia into like a theme park. And like, that's the premise of the setting. And so there's just so much that you can do with it. And who would have thought that like Gothic horror Dracula story would have that much variability? Yeah. Originally, I would have said there's no way. Like, you basically just play blah, I'm Dracula, come to suck your blood, kill the Dracula stake, game over. But just the community around, and there's a community around one module. Like there's Facebook groups and there's Discords, and there's such a massive community just for this one story. I mean, that just is a testament to the flexibility that it has.
I think there's on the DMs Guild. There's like the supplement that goes for Curse of Strahd, where like there's the book that kind of like conveys a lot of the lore, but like when you use the book out of the adventure, it's just like info dumping on your players, kind of. Yeah. Where um, in the game that we're playing in, El Genio is making it a lot more. It's a lot more interactive, and like I said, I think it's a product on the DM's going. I'll have to ask him about it because I keep talking about it. But like where
Yeah,
like
let me
you
see
go,
the link.
we refer to the we reference the book and go to the book, and then you get sucked into the book. So instead of like those parts where it would just be information dumped on your characters, you kind of like live through them.
Yes, yes. And I mean, I think honestly, that is such a critical, nuanced part of being a DM, right? Where it's, a lot of times we as world builders get so into our concepts and into our world that all we want to do is just dump information on our players. But information without context and without a reason to care is kind of pointless. And then, like, we as a DM care, but
Yeah.
like the players, like, we need to give them a reason. And so, like, being able to experience the information and getting it through playing and living it is, I think, just in general a more effective way to share that lore. And then the players also connect it and memorize it instead of saying, oh, you better be taking notes because there's going to be a dungeon master quiz later. And so that's awesome.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right there because I've definitely been and played with GMs where you're just like monologuing to your players, and it's like they don't care, right? For the most part,
Yeah,
like it's not interesting. Like you think it's cool, and maybe it was to come up with, but not for you to ramble on for 20 or 30 minutes. Like that's not why they came to the
exactly right.
table, right? So
Yeah,
figuring out how to introduce that stuff in a way that's interactive to them, giving it to them through a conversation with an NPC where maybe they're guiding that conversation.
exactly right. And then you
Um,
just tell them, like,
yeah,
and you may have pages and pages of notes. Feel free to do that, but just as long as you understand that's for you, and then the players will get the information that they care about and they want to know, and then you can use that to pull out and throw out whatever you actually need. But that's always been my philosophy as far as like being a world builder and like actually having a world and being a world builder versus actually telling a story are two different things, and you need
yes,
both. But that's always been kind of the thing is when, like, I'll go to, like, a convention or be on a panel and they'll ask, like, hey, as a first time world builder, what's like your number one piece of advice. And number one piece of advice is learn what to cut and learn what to show, because I think that the one thing that a lot of people fall into, and as when you're a first time world builder or DM, and it's the easiest thing, it's like, I have all these great concepts and I want to show my players it. It's like, well, if you
yeah,
don't have the story to go along with the concepts, then you may need to cut it. And actually, don't cut it and throw it away. Cut it for now. And I think about, basically, one of the campaigns that I run was the result of a cut concept from the very first campaign. And that was going to be like an arc or like a whole like piece of the story, and it didn't fit. I couldn't find a way to fit, and I couldn't justify it. I thought the concept was really cool, but I could not justify it. So I cut it for then, put it on the back burner. But then when we were going to do a new campaign, I'm like, oh my goodness, I had this great concept that's on the shelf. I'm going to build a whole campaign around that and then flesh it out with all of those ideas. So your great ideas will be there forever. Don't feel like you need to get it all out there now. Anyway,
yeah.
I
The
don't know
slow burn,
why.
the slow burn.
Oh
That
yeah, exactly right.
essentially the reason why DC movies suck for the most part is they don't understand. You don't have to like vomit all over your audience, all at once and change things all at once. The early Spider-Man movies were like that too, where it's like, wow, you just took like 3 story arcs and put it in one movie.
Well,
Good
I think
job
that's
making a flaming pile of garbage.
and that's the difficulty, right? Is where it because I think that here's the problem, right? A lot of people, especially maybe suits or executives that aren't into the storytelling craft, they see payoffs, and wow,
Yeah.
people really like payoffs. Yes, they do, but why? Why do they like payoffs? Because it's been built up, and so I think
Or
that's
you
what a lot of people miss.
or you make them work for it, right? Like what
Oh, exactly right.
yeah. And like that's the thing, like when you have these great ideas and these lore and stuff that you're building, but there's no real way for your players to have that information. The trick as a GM is to figure out how would you present this in a way where they need the information so they have to go find it. They have to
Exactly
uncover it,
right.
make it a puzzle or a riddle for them to solve. And then when you give them the information, it's the reward.
Exactly right. And when you then build it into the story and that their characters have to care, if the characters have to care, then the players will care, generally,
Yeah.
right? Generally speaking, if the characters have to care, then the players will care. And then when you do your big reveal and your big shocking twist, if it's been built up, then they are genuinely going to be absolutely floored. They're going to lose their minds and they're going to have it. It's going to be amazing. But if you just kind of have this twist and it's like, oh, you should care because I wrote it and I put a lot of hard work into it, absolutely true. And you should definitely respect that. But you also need to make sure that there's a reason that payoffs are a good payoff is always earned. And that's like number one storytelling you mentioned in movies, and there are a lot of genres and franchises and reboots and soft reboots and hard reboots that kind of forget that the reason why a lot of these great stories of the past had great payoffs is because it was built up, because it was earned. And I think that's something that people need to remember, that that's a critical part of storytelling.
Well, Disney and Marvel ran this grand experiment, right? That took them like 4 or 5 years and 30 movies, right? And to prove what we already kind of knew is like good storytelling is good storytelling, and people will keep coming back if you keep giving them a reason to. So it works, right? Like they didn't reinvent the wheel. They just said, "All right, here's our storylines that we have, and they've worked in the comics. How can we make them translate to a big screen?" And then they just let it go, over the course of however long it took, and it worked.
Yeah. And I think that also shows the power of like outlining. And that doesn't mean like necessarily have every single thing that you're going to do set in stone, but just like the power of outlining the general broad story arc and then the smaller story arcs within there. So you're able to have that foreshadowing and build up. And the more that you have planned and outlined, the more that you can like layer in. We're like, in our primary, like our original campaign that's still going, we just call it Prime. It's still going. And we started in 2015, so it's going to be 6 years old in December, and we're playing that, and we're still learning things in the story that were referenced in like the first 5 sessions, because I got very carried away and I basically had a grand outline. And granted, the story has been fleshed out a ton and a ton has changed, but the beats are there, so it allows for the proper foreshadowing. I think that Marvel did this outstandingly well, where with Kevin Feige, and he kind of knew where he wanted it to go, and he was that arbiter and the steward of it being a connected universe. And that really, when you have a vision of where it's going, it allows you to have that foreshadowing, and then when those payoffs do happen, it feels so good.
So, you said you have two regular campaigns going. You're one of the GMs.
Yes. So basically, we have three GMs at our table, and so the campaign I just mentioned is one of our weekly campaigns. That's our primary weekly campaign. We just call it Prime, and that's basically the campaign why Avantris was created, and it's the same campaign from 5 years ago. And then we have another weekly campaign that will be starting up, which is we kind of had an original version of it called Call of the Feywild. It's kind of we're going to be bringing that back later this year. And so that is full-blown shenanigans, exactly what you'd expect from an entire campaign in the Feywild. Absolutely off-the-wall, crazy role-play prompts that really, and Nikki is the DM of that, and she is an evil genius. Anyone who knows her and has seen her DM with her role-play prompts, and she'll draw and with goofy, kooky, Alice in Wonderland type things. And like here's like, oh well, your legs are fused together, but now also whenever you speak, you have like bubbles, and so we're all rolling on these tables to figure out what's going to happen to us, and then we have to stack and combine all of the prompts of all this horrible Feywild magic that's happening to us, and try to understand what's going on, but you can never make sense of it. And so it's madcap comedy. And then we have monthly campaigns, which is Beneath Dark Wings is our like epic monthly campaign where all 7 of us are at the table together. And then we'll be introducing another monthly campaign, which will be more of a brutal survival campaign. So that'll be interesting, but hopefully we can all get back to the table soon.
That sounds like it's going to need some homebrew rules.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And so Derek. So Derek is the DM of that upcoming. So myself, Nikki, and Derek are the DMs at the table. And Derek he was actually talking to me the other day, and he was like, "It is impossible to die of starvation in fifth edition." He's like,
Yeah.
you literally cannot die of starvation, basically. And so there's a ton of rules and subsystems that he's created. He spent over a year now working on like all of the he has like a mathematical equation for like if you kill and butcher an elk, how many pounds of meat that would actually get, and how many meals, and who that feeds, and how long, and like travel rules and all this crazy stuff that he's alluded to. He shared a little bit with me. I'll be a player in the campaign. He's GMing it, but it's a lot of custom homebrew rules in order to make the survival element very challenging and scary, probably.
So in the chat, Abby's weighing in 384 rats. Just
Yes.
as Mikey, agreement to evil genius, several agreements to evil genius. And also somebody got cursed, and every time they looked at a door handle, they saw someone's member instead.
There's a whole lot of in the Feywild, fairies are very they're frisky. Fairies are frisky, so there definitely
They get a
is
little
some
spicy.
a little spicy. Yes, very, very, very spicy. It can get, and yeah, there's a lot of memes involving rats. A lot of rats in the Feywild as well. So you'll just have to tune in to understand what the hell we're talking
Rats
about.
and dicks. I got you.
Yeah, rats and dicks. I mean, that was actually the original working title of the campaign, and then
We
Nikki
decided
finally
we'd go with
realized,
something a little more family friendly.
yeah, a little bit more family friendly here. We didn't want to alienate all of the sensitive folks. So there we are,
So,
Call of the Feywild.
so do you guys play any non D&D games?
So we have played some non D&D. We've been discussing trying to get some games of all sorts of systems in the works. The one game that we have played, we have a nine session campaign with the Root system, the Root RPG by Magpie Games, based on the board game by Leader Games, which is powered by the Apocalypse styled game, and that was actually our first foray outside of D&D. Obviously, being relative tabletop newcomers, D&D 5e was kind of like how we all got into tabletop beyond board games, and that was kind of our comfort zone. And so it was quite an experience to kind of leave that comfort zone of D&D. And I think that people were like, "Wait, where's the initiative? When do I go? When is my turn?" And so like that alone was like such a bizarre concept that I don't have a turn in combat. What the heck? The DM doesn't roll any dice. But it was a lot of fun, and that was wild and goofy. That's also on our YouTube channel, all 9 episodes of the Root RPG, and that's also kind of a fun thing to try new systems, but also to kind of try and just do totally stuff outside of Avantris and just explore with fun, creative worlds that are temporary. Like if we're just going to do like a little mini campaign, but can always revisit, and so that's always fun too. But I've definitely, I think there's we got Call of Cthulhu back here, and then there's a couple of other systems that we've been wanting to try. But I looked into Call of Cthulhu. It was something we were going to actually try to run online virtually, and I was reading all the rules, and I think, okay, I got it. This isn't so bad. And then I got to the section on guns, and the section on guns I feel like was just as much as all of the other rules like combined. And I'm like, okay, my peanut brain, nope, I cannot process this. Maybe another year.
I almost feel like if you're playing Call of Cthulhu, and I don't really know anything about the actual RPGs. I just just the lores and books I've read. I'm just like, I feel like when you get to that section, it should just be like, if you got to rely on guns at this point, you're screwed.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to shoot Cthulhu in the face and be fine.
No, it just doesn't work. Yeah, I mean, so we've played. This channel's relatively new. We're putting off our live stuff, but we've played a couple D&D games on here and now, and we've done a Cypher system game. I did a Flash Gordon, Thundar the Barbarian kind of mashup, which
nice.
Thundar the Barbarian actually is a cartoon I used to watch Saturday mornings as a kid. That actually, the year is 2020 in the cartoon.
Wow.
So we kind of like took those and mashed it with like what's going on, and set it in 55 years after 2020, where the world kind of mostly ends, but it still ekes on anyway.
Got
Uh,
it. Got it.
so it's like a post-apocalyptic science
Pulpy, like a
fantasy.
pulpy sci. That sounds fun as
Yeah,
hell. Yeah, I love that.
it was good. It was good. Unfortunately, had an issue with the channel. Most of the like half of the episodes are missing, but
Oh
we had
no.
fun playing anyway.
Yeah. I hate those technical difficulties. We've lost some very critical some critical stuff. Honey Heist was another system that we played. I know it's only a one sheet, but we
Yeah,
we had
no.
a very legendary Honey Heist episode that only a few clips remain of it on Twitch. But that was something that was also a blast. But yeah, I mean, and that's the kind of thing where like the more that you can the more systems that you try, I feel like it also is easier to justify kind of exploring other themes and other like go totally off the wall sometimes. I guess you could do that with the D20 rule set and the 5e rule set, but I feel like it's a little bit easier when it's like a D6 system to just kind of do whatever the hell you want.
So like when I want to play a different genre, I
Yeah.
try to move away from D&D games. And then if fantasy, like my fallback is probably always going to be D&D. Some habits are just hard to break.
Yeah, I think that, and that's the thing. Like I always say, like, there's no one system is better than the other, and it's just whatever you're looking for. And so, like, if you want to play D&D, play D&D. If you want to try something else, there's a ton of other systems. A lot of great tabletop creators and publishers that have just made some awesome games.
Yeah, I'm getting ready for a non-stream game to run some Monster of the Week. Which
Nice.
So now I have to learn the game. I mean, I played like 2 or 3 sessions. I'm like, this seems pretty easy.
I've been meaning to look into that, and I definitely need to, because I mean that's the style of game that I just think is would be a blast.
Yeah. So, well, we just finished up the Expanse. So that game ended, and I was talking to players a little bit about what they want to do. I'm like, well, here's some D&D options, but or we can do Monster of the Week, like a Friday the 13th series or Warehouse 13 series style, where you work for an organization retrieving cursed artifacts, or or solving paranormal and supernatural happenings. So I gave them their homework for the game. It's like, you guys have to come up with an acronym for the organization that you work for.
That's awesome. Yeah, I need to look into that. If once you run that, let me know how it goes. And
well, it's powered by the Apocalypse, so like those systems tend to be kind of easy, and I like the fact that it's like, I like that gradation where it's like failure, success with complications.
Yeah, it's really just kind of up to the GM to kind of really decide. And so, like, if they are failing, you need to make sure, like, well, what does that look like, right? And that's the great thing about those Powered by the Apocalypse style games. It's like, well, what does that mean? What is failure, or total success versus the semi-success or semi-failure look like? And it's really up to the GM. And I think that that's something that it is interesting, where I have felt, especially after running a PBTA game, where I feel like it does require a lot of trust in the GM.
Yeah.
Because the GM has so much more power that's not bound by dice. And obviously, right there in the rule book in D&D, the GM isn't bound by dice still, but
there's the illusion.
There's the illusion, right? There's the illusion. There is this system, the perception that the DM is just as much bound by dice as the players, where when you then kind of throw them into this PBTA system where there is no dice for the DM, and basically they're the ones just deciding what happens, it takes a lot of trust in the GM to make sure that, oh, you're not screwing me, and if you are, that there's got to be a good reason for it, and it'll make it for a better story.
Yeah, Cypher, the DM doesn't roll dice either.
Yeah.
It's like that, which I have mixed feelings about it. Like, it's kind of cool because you have the it's plausible deniability, since it's all on the players to roll the dice. Yeah. But at the same time, playing these games, I think part of the fun is rolling the dice.
I agree. I love rolling dice as a DM, and sometimes I will say, like, it requires me to go like full know, attempted galaxy brain when I'm running like super involved combat, and
Yeah.
I'm rolling like a million dice for all of the damage, and I'm trying to keep it all together, and I can definitely get a little bit lost in the dice sometimes. But I think ultimately, that is part of the fun. Another reason why I enjoy, even when I'm playing online, I still just roll dice. I don't use the online, the little button, just
The roller,
because
yeah.
you gotta have this is the physical sensation of rolling
Tactile.
dice. It's fun. It's fun. And obviously you need to trust your players in your party that they're not gonna lie about what they rolled. But once you have that, um,
So
then you're good.
when you are playing in person, do you roll in front or behind the screen?
I roll behind the screen. There are some times where there are rolls where that they're really important and they're dramatic, and I'll roll it publicly.
Uh,
And sometimes those are crazy, crazy rolls. But I generally like to keep the the mystique of the DM screen, and I also like to reserve the option to fudge whatever dice I want to, and I have no shame about that. I generally don't fudge it. I generally don't fudge dice, but there are sometimes, I think that having the option for drama, I think, is a critical part of a DM's toolkit. And there are people who have different philosophies. Like, well, if you fudge a single die roll, then what does it matter? Or then the game doesn't mean anything, and totally respect that. But I also think, that sometimes I think sometimes the DM, I think that sometimes the dice will can be better at drama and narrative than the DM, and I think that
yeah.
sometimes the DM knows what might be better for drama, and so I think that it's really about kind of the knack and or the feeling, knowing your table, knowing what you want to do.
I I'm just looking at the chat. Andy, I cheat every roll.
Well, I mean, obviously that's just expected.
Yeah, and Abby, of course you do, Andy. Your dice are cursed. Chessex. I am
Oh,
terrible
poor.
at rolling dice myself, but I do like I like rolling in the open just because I feel I like the randomness that we just don't know
Yeah,
what's going to happen. And there's
yeah,
definitely been times where I'm like, man, this doesn't look good for you guys.
yep.
And then I get to be excited when they pull it out anyway.
Yeah, and that is the thing where the dice can be very cruel, and I definitely will say when I first started DMing, I fudged a lot more. Now it rarely happens, and I've definitely killed some players now. I definitely killed some PCs because the dice can be absolutely brutal, and that has been a learning experience for me, and especially because like all of my fights are like fully homebrewed, and I just have to figure out, and I hope that it's balanced, and then that's where I can still let the dice roll, like fall where they will. But if I realize, like, while I'm running combat and I'm like, this is way too much, then I can still just dip the damage or the health of a boss or up it, and not have to fudge anything. But I can just like roll one fewer dice as change the stat block on the fly, which I think
Yeah.
is a little bit more in the spirit of randomness. Well, because I think that balancing without play testing, balancing any kind of encounter is very difficult when it's all just in theory.
There's definitely certain monsters that I've underestimated in the past. And then
Oh
they're
yeah,
like, yeah, we're gonna just change this on the fly. Instead of two attacks, they're gonna get one. I think I want to say it's a thug from the NPCs. It's kind of brutal. It's like they get two attacks and have pack tactics.
oh
It's
yeah.
it's like they don't do a lot of damage, but they're like going to always hit.
And that's the thing where there's sometimes where you're like, oh yeah, this shouldn't be too bad. But like, there was one encounter before we started streaming like forever ago, and the closest that anyone had gotten to death in, like, they had fought hags and horrible monsters, a swarm of rats. A swarm of rats was like the most dangerous encounter. Like I could not believe that. But basically, the swarm of rats. There's a couple swarms, and they almost like TPK'd.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm like, I don't know how to balance anymore if I can't have them all like somebody die to a hag, like a really powerful witch, and then some rats almost killed them. So I guess rats is the theme. What the heck? That is a running. We got
theme in your
rats twice in this
games.
conversation. Yeah, what the heck?
Yeah, you never know sometimes as a GM. And also, I don't think the 5e challenge system is the best anyway. To be honest with
It is difficult, and the problem with the it's I believe that it is very much balanced for Adventure League, and so you need to be thinking about like the Adventure League rules and restrictions and the magical items. And so normally when I like have a CR, I think, okay, well, for my party who like, they're I basically let them do whatever they want as far as like kind of like as long as they can justify it thematically within their character. And so they're way stronger. And my rolling system for stats is very forgiving because it's the whole hero through line, right? Like they are truly heroic characters. And so like I need to knock up the challenge rating a ton. And so like whatever it actually says, like, okay, well, let's like double that. And that's actually every encounter needs to be like a deadly encounter. According to the CR system. And so it is difficult, and I think it just requires the reps of like just kind of getting a sense of what your party can and can't handle. And there's also things where like I think about encounters of all of our various party comps, right? Where there's sometimes like, oh, in this campaign, this same fight would have been killed in 2 rounds by a party that's like only 4 members and like 2 levels lower than a party of 6, just because the class comp doesn't do as much damage or isn't as powerful. So you really need to think about the composition of the party while you're designing as well.
yeah, a lot of times I will look at the monsters and then I'll kind of gauge the capability of my players. That's also going horribly wrong as well. Because I'm like, oh, you know what? I can throw a bunch of Sturges at them. The Bard will just cast sleep and put them all to sleep. And then, like, the Bard is just whacking away with his longsword. I'm like, oh, this is not going to go the way I thought it was.
Yes. And so that's also the thing you need to think about. It's like, well, because you need to design an encounter, right?
Yeah.
For like, well, this is the party, this is their capability, and these are all the magical items that they have, right? And magical items are very powerful, especially if you're throwing out custom magical items that aren't bound by attunement, right? And so like I'm designing a lot of these fights. Sometimes I'm running a fight. I'm like, oh my god, you have so many magical items. There's so many things you could do to counter this, and just like, oh, I hit it with my axe, I hit it with my bow, I hit it with my sword, and it's like, oh, we just keep hitting it. I'm like, well, someone's gonna die, because I was accounting for more abuse of magic and magical items, but sometimes that happens. The characters just forget that they have an entire arsenal sometimes.
Well, it's funny in that game that Bard would like not use their Bard abilities for most of the game. And then we like started picking up playing and they're much higher level, and then they started doing all this stuff. And the other players, like their characters are like, wait a minute, you can do stuff?
Amazing. Well, that's the kind of the interesting thing is where like I'm used to like the bards who do like no damage, they don't hit anything, and all they're trying to do is I'm trying to use a word that is PG-13, just like that messes with the enemies and just tries to mess with the DM and make it as madcap and insane as possible. And I think I would actually welcome a bard who just wants to hit things with a sword, so I don't have to be forced to improv when an NPC suddenly is convinced that he is missing a body part somewhere that I will not divulge which.
Yeah, I mean, we've had those bards as well. I mean, we're so in Ted's game. He, Lucky, one of our players, played this fantastic bard that just was a nightmare for him. He was always controlling his monsters or animating 40 daggers or
oh my gosh, it's insane. Well, and that's the thing where it's and I really enjoy DMing against that kind of thing, because in my very first campaign, it's basically 4 classes and 4 characters that are basically all very heavy hitting, just a ton of damage, and not a ton, a little bit of like the kooky spell casting. But then like the next campaign that I dealt with, like there's so much trickery and crazy kooky business that I was not ready for, and I'm glad I wasn't ready for it, because it led to some of the most hysterical moments that we've had. But they're wizards and clerics and bards can do a lot of shenanigans. Let me tell you.
yeah, spellcasters.
I was not ready for it. Yeah, casters in general. They're not and druids. Yeah, basically all the pure casters. They can do some kooky stuff.
Once you hit like level 11, forget about it. Like,
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I kind of did like a one-off with our regular group, and it was during the holiday, so I just want to do something holiday themed. And there's Frog God Games has a module called Orcus Claws, and it's for like third level characters, I think, and they were like 17th. So I was like, this is fine. I can make this work.
Yeah. You know?
But the funny thing is, right? So I just like doubled like all the numbers or quadrupled all the numbers, to make it work and kind of like just converted it on the fly. But there's one point where they're in this village and they have to go to where Orcus Claws is, which is at the top of the mountain. So the Dragonborn sorcerer's just like, I cast Wish. I wish we were over there. So I guess we're not doing all this in between stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing where it is very, I feel like it's kind of twofold, right? Where I think, I still think that the sweet spot for D&D is like 6 to 10. That's like kind of the real, where you're powerful, you feel like you're a hero, but you're not like approaching demigod level. And I think that's still the sweet spot. I also think that like a DM can challenge a party of any level. That being said, the craziness of spellcasters at higher levels is so insane that I do think that, like, in order to just not have why doesn't the caster just solve the problem with magic? If you're the kind of party that doesn't want to just cheese it to the end, the players need to basically kind of have an agreement of like, we're not gonna completely destroy the DM's plans. We need to like strike the balance of what kind of things we're going to skip. Like, we'll skip some stuff, but not all of it. Or you can just wish yourself to Orcus Claus's workshop.
It worked out really good, to be honest with you, though, because it's like, there's no other way we would have did it in one session without skipping us. So I was like, all right, this works.
I love that.
And
I love that.
So the fun thing is, like, Orcus Claus has this ability where he can charm a party member, and he did. And like my heavy hitters were these goblin rangers.
Nice.
That were modeled off of juggalos. So they were gobelos. They both had entertainer background. Well, one went assassin and one went battle master at a certain point. And the one that went battle master got charmed, and he's like, how charmed am I? How much do I have to try and fight my party? Well, I'm like, I'm going to leave it up to you. And he's like, and he really didn't want to. But he just like used all of his battle master dies, action surged, and just like wrecked the party.
Yeah, well, a battle master, when a battle master wants to hit hard, my goodness, I think that's probably the strongest martial class in the game, or subclass.
And I think they pretty much dropped the ranger assassin, basically their brother, and then moved on to the next player in the group. But I love it when like I get charmed and I have to fight the party. Like, I go whole hog and lean all the way into, like, with my character that I played from 1st to 20th level. I was expecting Ted to do it at some point, and he never did. I was so disappointed because I'm just like, I'm ready. I want to steal when strike the party twice.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I think the party would probably never forgive you if that was, maybe you guys are just the best of friends, but oh my gosh.
You know what? I just think it's funny to lean into it.
I love it. Yeah. I mean,
I would never do it. Like, if my character didn't had a choice, but I also don't like I don't like it when people cheese it. And also, I just think it's funny to be able to, like, well, I don't know, guys. I don't know what to tell you. I don't have a choice. I'm charmed.
Yep. Sorry. I'm just going to stab you 100 times. It's not, it's not me. It's the Dracula. It's not me. I'm sorry. I don't have a choice. Yeah. I'm trying to think of if I've ever been charmed. Any of my characters have been charmed. I must have in the Feywild. But there's probably some horrible catch to it, and I probably summoned a bunch of rats.
That was the second time. That was 2 sessions in a row that it happened to that character. And amazing. like the one, yes, I did it because it was homebrew stuff. The second one was like, it was just in the module. So,
yeah, that's how it works. And
I might have even rolled randomly to see who was getting charmed.
I love that. I love that. Charms are fun.
It is a lot of fun. Like, yeah, anytime someone builds that like unbeatable character, you're like, okay. Or
Yeah. any unbeatable character within the rules can be beaten, right? Like, there is absolutely something that you can do as a DM to just absolutely throw a wrench in the plans. And I think that it's absolutely seeing the creativity of the party and the players to overcome those challenges is half of the fun of the system.
When when the super tanky barbarian gets charmed,
Yep.
and
Or
then you're like,
just
all right, guys, you guys figure out how you're going to deal with this. He's been my headache for the past 12 levels.
Exactly.
Now have fun with it.
Or just throw in a bunch of psychic damage and a bunch of Gith Yankee and Githzerai or whatever, and just chunk him and just drop him, and then then see what happens. The barbarian can't tank for you anymore. What are you going to do about it?
What are you playing in the Feywild game?
I play a Goblin Druid, and so who has a baby owl bear companion. Which is a holdover from when he was a ranger. So I originally rolled him as a ranger with an owlbear companion, and then I re-rolled to druid. And Nikki was a very, very gracious DM and allowed me to keep my pet, but she's really just there more for flavor. She's not particularly useful in combat, my pet, but she's basically the mascot of sorts. If you see like a little baby owl bear head and like our emotes and stuff, that's Hootsie.
Oh, nice.
And so I just love Druid and Cleric are my two favorite classes in 5th edition, just far and away. I'm sure Wizard, if I had a chance to play one, would be up there. And just being able, having the flexibility of the wild shape, and I'm a shepherd druid, so I have an increased summoning, and that's why I can summon so many rats. And that's the joke of basically, when in doubt, summon a bunch of rats. And yeah, so Goblin Druid is one of the most fun characters that I've played.
In the Dungeons and Delving game playing we have a Ranger Beastmaster who has Hefty, which is a Gantuan, which is a beast that we made up in our world, and it's kind of like a combination of a 6-legged hippo and kind of like mastodon. It's like this massive creature. Almost like Apu from, or not Apu, Appa from from Airbender, but they can't fly and they look a little bit different, less bisony,
more hippo mammoth. Love it. That is epic.
Yeah. So he's got a baby one of those as his animal companion, and we're using the rules in Tasha's. So
nice.
Yeah, so he's gonna end up being the true star of the show, I think.
I think so. I think that when there is like a clear like animal, like when there's like the one animal sidekick of the of the whole party, that's kind of when they become the mascot. And then there's some parties where like every single person has their own animal, and then it's a whole like a menagerie. And so I think that sounds. I mean, if it's the Appa of the group, I mean that's just everyone's gonna fall in love with that critter more than the party, certainly.
More Thundar holdovers. Maybe that might be a thing on there. That show was a long time ago. I don't exactly remember much other than the sun sword that he used.
That's a classic.
Yeah. And also, what was his companion?
He had a
big
six
beast
legs,
looking
right?
guy.
Yeah. Did he have the horn that shot the stuff? Is that
no? That's
that's something else.
The Herculoids.
Yes. That was a different show. I'm getting it all mixed up.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that one was even before my time. That was like Nickelodeon reruns.
Oh, I guess so. Like it's like the old school Hanna-Barbera stuff. Anyway, my
Space Ghost and Herculoids, and I feel like there was like a third show or whatever that was like along those veins as well.
Classics.
Yeah. So, do you know what you're going to be playing in the survival game?
Yes, actually, I am playing a Triton Barbarian. That's a Triton, or a Beast Barbarian, the new Barbarian that came out I believe in Tasha's.
Oh, nice! This is going to be shark themed or something.
Yeah, it's basically kind of like all sorts of transformations. Going to be like deep or ocean creatures. And so in the art that I have of him, he has a big giant like Davy Jones crab claw, and he's very much going to be your classic. If you've seen the Lighthouse the film by Robert Eggers, the Willem Dafoe character in that, like a salty former whaler, former pirate kind of guy, who's very superstitious and is obsessed with a beautiful woman that he sees in a shell that no one else can see. And somehow this woman in the shell is responsible for his nautical transformations. So we'll see where that story goes. I've been working on my my West Country accent. So I apologize to everyone from the West Country that eventually sees my horrible butchering of the accent. And I've been listening to a lot of sea shanties to get in the mood. So we'll see how that goes. I'm very excited.
Sounds like you could almost be like a warlock.
Yeah, there are some warlock elements, and I'm gonna have to like butter up Derek a little bit to see. Like, I actually thought about, like, would it be possible to multi-class as like a warlock, like, in there, and have that biz? But I mean, we'll figure that out. We'll cross that bridge. Derek is a very benevolent DM, but
Nice.
if it makes sense to just stay barbarian and just kind of have that be flavored,
Yeah,
it's very warlock-esque.
You can do the narrative, sure, why not? So we are up on the hour mark.
Oh yeah.
Final thoughts before we head on out?
I just want to say thank you very much for having us, and it's been great to chat with you and all of the lovely folks in chat. And hopefully, Legends of Avantris, you check us out on Twitch and on YouTube, and hopefully we'll be back from our hiatus. And it's been a great conversation. And once again, thank you.
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. I can't wait till we can catch up in person again someday after the end times end.
After the end times, the after times will be much better than the current times.
For sure. With that, and until next time, everyone, stay nerdy.
Have a good one, guys.